Oh my goodness, where do I start? So, my name is Slandy Noel. I was born and raised in Haiti. I was 15 when I moved to the States. I lived in Boston for most of my life, but I moved down to Georgia about 5 years ago when I took a contract position to work for a private laboratory. And so I went to college to study biochemistry. So, of course, usually people ask, why biochemistry? But of course, with my Haitian background, it only makes sense because the goal was for me to go to medical school. Took the MCAT and everything, and decided not to go to medical school and focused on doing my master's in biology and immunochemistry. So, I ended up working as a scientist for 14 years, working, taking private contracts for companies like Quest Diagnostics, Boston Scientific, and so forth. But about 5 years ago, I've decided to, start my own company, my own organization. And one of the reasons why I decided to start my coaching business is because I myself had gone through a divorce. I was married for 10 years. I'm a mother of two. And after my divorce about 8 years ago, I realized that there were not enough resources out there to help and support women, especially women going through a divorce, because, you find that divorce is still a taboo subject. Even though 50% of people get divorced, it's still one of those topics that people don't talk about. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to really build my own organization, my own company. It's called Divorce Coaching Goddess. And with that, I was able to not only to coach women, but also become a public speaker where I help women understand that, yes, you may have gotten divorced, but at the end of the day, you still have, a life to live, and you still need to live your life courageously. It's interesting because oftentimes, sometimes, you have to say, okay, I'm a speaker, I'm an empowerment, coach. I'm also a speaker, author, right? I'm also an investor because I invest a lot in multifamily. Being able to empower other women, I don't want them to only, because I find that when you live life, especially as a single mother, you need to figure out different avenues, right? You need to figure out the different skills that you may have that you may not have to when you were married. Because when you are married, you have a partner to bounce ideas off. You have a partner to rely on. You have someone to help pay the bills, right? So you're not all by yourself trying to figure things out. But when you become a single parent, you have to learn very quickly to maximize on your skills, because God give all of us talents, right? Some of us may have less talents than others, but they do exist. So one of the reasons why I even became an author is because I wanted women to understand that, yes, you may have gone to a divorce, but you're going to have to pick yourself up, and you're going to have to continue to do what you need to do, not only for you, but for your children, because they're waiting on you, right? They're counting on you. You're going to be the one now who has to provide for them financially, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, physically. They're yours. Responsibility. Of course, people may sometimes say to me, well, yes, you're divorced, but the ex always help. But what people always fail to understand is that for divorced mothers, we are more likely the one to have full custody of our children, not fathers, right? Yes, there are some few fathers who get full custody, but for the most part, when it comes to physical custody, usually it's the mother who gets to have it, which means you're the one who has to put a roof over their head. You can live in that 1-bedroom house, because if you have 2-3 kids, you need to figure out a way to purchase a bigger home, right? To make sure that you live in a better school system and so forth. So your finances get stretched to the max. And one of the things that I've always wanted to help women to understand is, yes, you're going to get stretched to the max, but you also have the ability, if you rely on God and rely on the fact that you have more skills than you believe that you do. When I was going through my divorce, I was like, I truly believe every single person has at least a book in them. I truly believe that, because all of us have gone through some trials and tribulations, may it be from our childhood or even from, adulthood, right? There are certain things that's going to happen in your life that are really going to be unique to you. And sometimes we may think that it's unique to us. And sometimes we go through things not necessarily for us, but really to help another person to overcome it when they come to that impasse. So for me, I really believe about 5 years ago, almost everyone was asking me, they were telling me, you need to write a book. You need to write a book because it will make a difference in any woman who's going through a divorce or who has recently become a single mom. One of the reasons why, in fact, I wrote The Girlfriend Guide to Break Up and Divorce is because I really wanted women to learn the different steps that you can take, right? You have to really focus on your finances because when you become more financially stable, it becomes a little bit easier for you. Then you can breathe. You have more breathing room, right? And it's easier for you to make better decisions for your children. So when I wrote this book, and there are many chapters to it, of course. There are 12 steps to it. And I talk about, being single and mingling. I talk about, finances, and I talk about self-care, because that is something that is so important for mothers, especially single mamas, to learn to really set up a system, right? Like a more to surround themselves by people who can help them. Because if you become a single mom and you're trying to do it on your own, it's gonna be, not only is it gonna be hard, it's gonna be taxing on your body. And that's one of the reasons why I mentioned in the book that, I actually end up getting diagnosed with kidney disease when I was going through my divorce and after. And of course, people were like, wow, that's such a personal thing to talk about. And I said, I want women to understand the reality of not taking care of their health, right? Because if you are stressed to the max and you're not taking care of you, your health will deteriorate. That's just the way it is, right? So I even talk in the book, and I also talk about moving forward, right? Picking up the pieces and figure out a way to not necessarily keep on going back to shoulda, coulda, woulda, because we do have the tendency to do that, to say, oh, maybe I should have done it this way. Maybe I could have done it this way. Maybe I could have tried to make my marriage work. But one thing I want women to always stick with them is always remember, sometimes people are in your life only for a season. We may want them to stay for a lifetime when God is trying to tell you, let them go. You see, like, let them go. It's only, and God can really work with you and help you to move forward with your life if you keep on hanging on to things that he's trying to get rid of, right? At the end of the day, you can't continue on living in the past. You need to really take the steps forward and move on with your life. So, and this book was really geared towards like women who recently get divorced, because I will tell you, for women who've been divorced for 5-10 years, it's not beneficial. Right? Because some of those things they've already gone through. They've already had to deal with it. And hopefully they have finally figured out a way to get their finances in order and to take care of themselves. But one of the reasons why, for me, I wanted to be captivating. I wanted whoever to see it, to even see the color, even the colors that I chose. I wanted to be nice and bright and sunny, because I want the person who wants to read this book to look at it and said, okay, it's not depressive. This woman is sitting there still. She's at peace, right? She's moving forward with her life. And that is the goal, really, for anybody to pick up the book and said, oh, okay, this is catchy. This is interesting. So I'm going through a breakup right now. It's tough for me. Or I'm going through a divorce right now. It's very tough for me. When I wrote this book, I was paying. I was actually overcoming a lot of like frustration and anger. I was not in the best state of mind when I wrote this book. And even if you were to pick up the book and read the first chapter, it focuses a lot on, what my hopes and dreams were, right? Because it talks a lot about how when you get married, you don't get married ever thinking you're ever going to get divorced. That's not the goal of marriage. The goal is to stay married for a lifetime. And when that does happen, it doesn't work out that way. The pain, the failure, the frustration, it lingers on for a very long time. Remember, I just said that I've been divorced for 8 years, but when I wrote that book, I wrote it a couple of years after my divorce. I was still going through the motion of it. I was still going through the pain. And I felt like in many ways that, to tell the truth, I've only read this book once after I wrote it. I realized that the state of mind that I was in, to some degree, I relieved some of that pain. There's always going to be a little part of you that's still going to feel like you failed in some way. Mm-hmm. So, and that's really the truth. And I know for me, even though I've moved on and I'm in a wonderful place in my life, but there's still a part of me where when I read it, I still can remember how I felt in the moment when I wrote it. You see, and so that book was written because I drew a lot of it from my own life, you know, my own pain and the way that, and how I felt in the moment. The new book that I'm writing right now, it's not only coming from my own personal experience, but also from having worked with so many women. Like, you know, a very friend of mine read my book and she said, I didn't know you were in that much pain because you never said a word. You never spoke. You stayed quiet. You never complained. And I said, what were you going to say? I mean, what was I going to say? You know, what's to say, right? Like, so that's one of the reasons why for me, I always take pen to paper. You know, I journal not only for me, but also for my children. So writing is part of who I am. Because oftentimes, you know, we think, okay, well, things are not working out now because I'm unhappy. And you think somehow you're going to get happier when the marriage ends. And I try to help them understand that's not necessarily the way this works. There are certain marriages, it's not salvageable. Sorry, you're not going to be able to salvage that. However, there are some, you know, couples, some women that I talk to where I said to them, you know, you may want to sleep on that decision because it doesn't only affect you in the moment. It doesn't even affect you even in your future, but it will also affect your children and your family members at large. Because when you have two families together and when divorce happens, there's a huge separation.